He's dead, you freaking mutie. Are you satisfied? You feel revenged yet? He's dead too.
Mike Childress was pointing at Billy Warner, but the corpse wasn't news to Nick. He knew what he had to do, too, but he wanted to finish his lunch first.
I'm on a hunger strike. Friggin' hunger strike. I won't eat nothing till I'm out. You'll eat my dingle before I eat anything you bring me. You friggin' deaf-mute retard ass.
Lunch was a mistake. The sick smell coming off Billy's body was making Nick's stomach do cartwheels and handstands.
Let me out. You keep me in here, it's murder. That's all it is, cold-blooded murder.
Took Nick 10 minutes to get the big man's remains down the steep stairs to the prison cellar. Panting, Nick laid what was left of Billy Warner next to Vince Hogan's corpse on the concrete under the fluorescents. After Miss Baker's death, Nick had gone exploring, knocking on doors and ringing bells throughout Shoyo. He was answered by less than a dozen times, by sick but hopeful faces that would look out, see Nick, then shut their doors again. Hope dead. Nick had the feeling that the normal world was skewing, and a place where babies were sacrificed behind closed blinds and stupendous black machines roared on and on in locked basements.
2 down, 1 to go. You're getting your revenge, right? Right? Well, I got the constitution of a brass eagle, and I think maybe I just got a mild case of it. I think I'll throw it off. You think that might be possible? Listen, man, let me out, please. I'm begging you now. Hell, you got a gun. I don't want you for nothing. I just want to get out of this town. What do you say? Give me a chance. Don't keep me locked up in this rat trap. My God, all this? I'm sorry we beat you up. It was Ray's idea. Me and Vince tried to stop him, but he gets drinking and he gets crazy and... I'm getting the hell out of here. You're wise. You'll do the same thing, Mutie. This is like the Black Death or something.
Nick Andros never saw Mike Childress again, but his heart felt lighter immediately, having freed the sick man, and that night he would lie down on his cot and fall asleep almost at once. Larry Underwood's mother died 3 days ago. He's been wandering ever since. All the animals in the Central Park Zoo were dead or sick. Larry could hear the flies buzzing. The lion, the zebra, and the antelope had died of starvation or thirst. This monkey here, though, had a good case of the superflu. It would be dead in a matter of minutes. Crazy old man was haunting the park, shouting things like,
"Monsters coming! Monsters on the way! They're in the suburbs!"
Larry approached him, but the monster shouter ran off in utter terror. There were other people in the park. Larry talked to a few of them. All their stories were pretty much the same. Their friends and relatives were dead or dying. There had been shootings all over the island. Tiffany's had gone up in an inferno. Hordes of rats were coming up out of the subways. Near the band shell, Larry approached a woman dressed in expensive clothes, popping a pill into her mouth. She was maybe 50, but had taken pains to look younger.
"Hi, I'm not dangerous." "No, you don't look dangerous, and you're not sick either. Sit down and join me. I'm Rita Blakemore. Mister, pleased to know you. I'm Larry Underwood. When I heard you were coming, I almost hid. I thought you were that man with the broken glasses and the queer philosophy who reminds me of an insane Diogenes. I call him the Monster Shouter. Just looking for an honest monster." Tell me, Larry, do guns really kick and make a loud noise when they go off? "I have this one. It was my husband's .32, I believe. He was an executive at a major New York bank and insanely afraid of burglars." "Do you think I could hit that tree over there?" "I don't really think..." Bullseye. "Although, do you know? I couldn't shoot a person with it. I'm quite sure of that. And anyway, soon there won't be anyone left to shoot, will there?" Larry's heart was resuming something like its normal rhythm. "Oh, I don't know about that. You're looking at my rings, aren't you? Would you like one?" "Huh? No. As a banker, my husband believed in diamonds, the way the Baptists believe in revelations. I have a great many diamonds, but I'd happily hand them over. After all, they're only rocks again, aren't they?" "I guess that's right." Larry saw a tick in Rita's neck spasm, then became serene, and she popped another gel capsule. "What are those?" "Vitamin E." She smiled a glittering, false smile. "You want to hear something funny? This morning, I met a guy who said he was going out to Yankee Stadium to masturbate on home plate. What an awfully long walk for him. Why didn't you suggest someplace closer?" "Ha! Yeah, I should have. You know, you're quite pleasant to talk to, and it's wonderful that you're not crazy. If you're hungry, Larry, perhaps you'd like to take this lady to lunch."
He thought she had a beautiful smile and liked her light, casual chatter. "As a matter of fact, Miss Blakemore, I am, and I would." The two went to a steakhouse on Fifth Avenue, and Larry cooked, a trifle clumsy, and Rita applauded each dish. Steak, French fries, instant coffee, and strawberry rhubarb pie. There was a fly crawling on Frannie Goldsmith's pie. Her mother and father were both dead. Carla Goldsmith had died in Sanford Hospital, and Peter Goldsmith had died upstairs in his bedroom, where his body still was. He had taken sick after the town hall meeting where it had been decided that Ungunquit would be closed off entirely. Anyone who tried to get through would be shot dead. Any questions? Dead, someone asked. You bet, someone else answered. That was how many days ago? Frannie's mind wandered. Flies, pies, eyes, dies. Outside it was a beautiful summer day, flawless, the kind that the tourists came to the Maine seacoast for. Frannie could read the thermometer out the back window, and it hit her. You can't keep a corpse in the house. Not in summer. Who's gonna bury Daddy? The answer that came was perfectly clear. She was, of course. Who else? It was 2:30. Frannie had been digging in the garden for a few hours when a Cadillac pulled into her drive and Harold Lauder stepped out. A little bit about Harold. He was 16 years old and edited the Ungunquit High School literary magazine and had wrote strange stories that were told in present tense or with the point of view in the second person, or both. One time, Harold's sister Amy said to Frannie, "He whacks off in his pants. How's that for nasty?" Looking at him, Frannie always sensed that every thought Harold ever had was coated lightly with slime. "Say, Fran, I'm canvassing the township. Not many resisting this dread disease, but I heard you were having some success on that front." Fran could feel Harold's eyes crawling over her the way the fly had on her pie. "Hi, Harold. I was awfully sorry to hear about Amy. Are your mother and father?" "Afraid so. But life goes on, does it not? How do you like my car?" "It's Mr. Brannigan's, isn't it?" "It was, but—" "Why, whatever can you be doing, my child?" Frannie could take a lot of things, Lord knows, but not that. Not Harold Lauder feeling her up with his eyes and calling her my child. "I'm not your child, Harold. I am 5 years older than you. It is physically impossible for me to be your child. And it's a grave for my father." "Fran, in the garden? Well, what would you suggest? That I put him in a coffin and drag him to the cemetery? What in the name of God for? He loved this garden. And what business is it of yours anyway?" A few moments later, the voice came from outside the screen door, low and hesitant. "Fran, I've been driving around in that Cadillac, my learner's permit, all day. I feel like an imposter or an actor in a play. There have been moments today when I've been sure I was mad." She suddenly felt bad for Harold, who had probably never had a date in his life. He was trying hard to be a good guy, which for him must have been like speaking a foreign language. "You're not crazy, Harold. We're not crazy. What's that line? I'll be in your dream if you'll be in mine. No, someone will come. After this disease, whatever it is, burns itself out. Someone in authority. Fran, it was the people in authority who did this. But it's just some funny strain of flu, Harold. No, Mother Nature doesn't work that way, sorry. Some bacteriologist in some government installation somewhere announced one day, 'Look what I made. It kills almost everybody. Isn't it great?' And then somebody spilled it. Look, I'm going to get out of Ungunquit. If I stay much longer, I really will go crazy. Why don't you come with me? I don't know where, not yet, but somewhere. When you think of a place, come ask me again." "All right, I will. What are you going to do in the meantime?" "Finish burying my father, of course." Fran laid her mother's best tablecloth on the bed her parents shared all their married life. As she rolled Peter onto his shroud, he let out a hideous long burp. That made Frannie sink to the floor. It was her father she was burying, and the very last of his humanity was this juicy, gassy smell that now hung in the air. Some length of time later, Frannie removed Peter's pajamas and dressed him in the best suit and pinned his army medals to his lapel. Then she folded the tablecloth over him, and with her mother's sewing kit, closed the seam. Somehow, by taking lots of breaks, by ignoring the terrible aches in her neck and back, she managed to get her father's body downstairs and out into the garden. It was 9:15 when Fran finally fit the last sods of earth back into place, like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. She was filthy and spent. Only the flesh around her eyes was white. They had been washed clean by her tears. Inside her house, in the living room, Frannie sat down on the couch to kick off her sneakers and fell asleep instantly, and dreamt. In the dream, she climbed the stairs to her parents' bedroom again, to do her duty and see her father decently underground. But when she entered the room, it wasn't her father she found. It was someone else. Grinning, but she couldn't see his face, though she could see the gift this terrible apparition had brought for her unborn baby. A twisted, rusty coat hanger. Fran woke up briefly, in the 3 o'clock darkness of the living room, and thought, "Him! It's him! The walking dude! The man with no face!" before falling back asleep almost immediately and mercifully, dreamlessly this time. The next morning, Fran didn't remember her dream, but when she thought of the baby in her belly, a feeling of fierce protectiveness swept over her all at once, frightening her with its depths and strength. From what Stu could see from his window, the town of Stovington was completely deserted. Like the man on the record said, you don't need to be a weatherman to tell you which way the wind blows. The same evening, Larry slept with Rita. Frannie slept alone, dreaming her terrible dream. Stu Redmond waited up for Elder, the man with the revolver who accompanied the doctors and nurses whenever they came to Stu's cell. He's been waiting for 2 days now. Stu supposed that Elder's final orders would be to kill him. And why not? They had been unable to find a cure using him, and he was a loose thread that knew all their secrets. The nurses called Elder Dr. Elder, but he was no doctor. He was a man waiting for orders, and there would be no reasoning or pleading with such a man. It would happen the time Elder came alone, so that there wouldn't be any witnesses. And that night, while Harold slept in his bed, dreaming of Frannie, Elder came. Alone. "How are you feeling?" Stu could hear, in the nasal quality of Elder's voice, that he was sick. "You don't talk much, do you? I like that in a man. I just got the word on you about 20 minutes ago, Mr. Redmond. They're not such hot orders, but I think you'll be..." "Christ Jesus! That's a damn rat! What kind of place you running with rats in it?" "Rat?" Stewart figured he'd have one more good swing with the chair before Elder recovered. He made it count. Stu swung the chair one last time, and then finally, Elder was still. Outside his cell in the anteroom, Stu found a thin sack of medical charts and his clothes. The cold finger of dread touched him. These things would have followed him into the crematorium, no doubt. He would have become an unperson. So long, Stewart. There was a noise behind him. "Don't move. Stop moving." After that, his need to get out of there was so strong, Stu bolted with barely enough time to think. What if there are other men with guns behind me and the outside world? But there weren't. Only the corpses of doctors and nurses, silent sentinels. The complex was much larger than he assumed, and Stu was running up one flight of stairs, down another, twisting along corridors, panting, becoming convinced there was no way out. The echo of his footfalls chased him, as if Elder had lived long enough to put out a squad of ghostly MPs on his trail. But then Stu rounded a corner and started up a flight of stairs that ended at the door, which read. Stu was halfway up the stairs when he felt a hand slip out of the darkness behind him and grasp his ankle. "Come down and eat chicken with me, beautiful. It's so dark." The grinning thing held on, blood and bile trickling from the corners of its mouth. Terrified, screaming, Stu kicked at the hand holding his ankle, then stomped it. As he threw his shoulder against the door to the outside world, Stu heard a series of thudding crashes behind him. Then he was outside and free. A cool evening breeze touched his face, whispering in the pines. Night had never smelled as fragrantly sweet as this. A crescent moon in the sky. Stu turned up to it, thankfully, and said, "I'm alive! Thank God I'm alive! Thank you, God, thank you! God, thank you, I'm alive!" And for the first time since this whole mess began, Stewart Redmond started to cry. Christopher Kit Brannington was more scared than he'd ever been in his life. Off me. "I'm not on you, man. I'm just hanging suspended above you like the great invisible world. We've got to talk, kitty kitty. About ships and seals and sailing wax, and whether or not bees have stings. Also about the papers you're supposed to have for me, and the car, and the keys to the car. Can't talk. Sick." "Oh, you better be able to talk, 'cause if you don't, I'm gonna add your baby blues to my keychain, and you're gonna be trotting around hell with a seeing eye dog. Tell me what I need to know. However, I'll give you pills. Pills to make you well, to take care of everything." Bradenton tried, desperately, to think. He had gotten this man a car? The flames of delirium had burned out whole chunks of his memory. Let's see. Does this help you remember? Strangely, it did. The papers Brandon had prepared, in the name of Randall Flagg, were on a dresser downstairs. The car, a souped-up Buick, was parked behind Conoco Station, just outside of town, beneath a tarp, keys under the mat. Brandon finished telling the dark man what he knew and looked at him with dumb hope. He'd been promised pills, but that was a lie, of course. Don't think unkindly of me. It's just that the carnival is open early, along with the rides. The pitch till you win, the Wheel of Fortune, and it's my lucky night, kid. I feel that strongly, so I have to hurry. At the place where Conoco's tarmac became highway, Flagg turned right and began heading south. Lloyd Henry was going crazy batshit. Since 7 that morning, when he noticed the front leg of his cot was loose, he'd been trying to unscrew its bolts. He had 5 of the 6 done. His only tools were his fingers, though, and they now looked like raw hamburger. Everyone in the prison, but Lloyd, was dead or gone. The cell to his left, for instance, housed the corpse of a man named Trask, who died awaiting trial for armed robbery. Lloyd was down to the last few scraps of food that he had had the foresight to ration. With no water and no fresh food, he'd be dead in success. The last bolt came free with stupid ease. At which point, Lloyd wondered why he even wanted the damn cot leg in the first place. A sleek rat materialized a couple hours later. It took Lloyd 2 swings to kill it. Afterwards, Lloyd looked in the Trask cell for a long, thoughtful time, watching the flies circle and land and take off from the corpse. Yes, sir, Trask was a regular LA International Airport for flies. Just in case. Just in case is all. Lloyd put the rat under his mattress, where the flies couldn't get to it. At 22 minutes of 9, the lights went out in the whole town.
He's coming for you, Nick.
Nick Andrews had been reading a gothic novel when it happened.
He's out there on the highways of night.
As soon as the darkness enveloped him, a voice started whispering to Nick from deep in his mind, from the place where nightmares lived.
And hiding, the dark man.
There were candles in the supply cabinet, Nick remembered, though the thought of them did little comfort to him. For a while, the 2 figures swayed in the dark like black dancers. Nick and the creature from his nightmare seemingly come to life. Nick felt the world going away. The pain in his throat, at first sharp, grew numb and far off, almost pleasant. The last of his strength, Nick stamped his heel down hard on one of the thing's feet and threw his weight back at the same time. They both went tumbling. Nick remembered the gun in Sheriff Baker's holster. He struggled to get it out of the holster and the bullet furrowed the side of Nick's leg and embedded itself into the floor. Following the sound, the dark shape fell on Nick like dead fate. In the moonlight, Nick saw a purple gleam on one of the thing's hands. Ray Booth, who had skipped town after beating him senseless, who had been watching Nick from the woods, plotting his return and revenge, even as his own body succumbed to disease, who jammed one of his thumbs into Nick's right eye and began grinding away. Somehow, Nick managed to push Baker's gun into Ray's flabby stomach and... Sobbing with pain and terror, Nick crawled out from under the dead man. After a while, Nick found and lit a candle. Ray looked like a dead whale cast up on the beach. Nick inspected himself in the small mirror Sheriff Baker had used to comb his hair. He wasn't sure, but he thought he might be one-eyed now, as well as deaf and dumb. Spent as he was, Nick started kicking Ray Booth's corpse over and over, shrieking in his mind at the dead man. Are you happy? You would have left me deaf, dumb, and blind in this land of the dead, if you could have. How do you like this now, huh? You like this? Outside the station, the dark held hard and fast. Outside, all the lights in the world were going out.
Hey, Trashcan Man, digging you trashy? Lit any good fires this week? Hey, Trashcan Man, don't you know playing with fire makes you wet the bed?
Donald Merwin Elbert, known since grade school as the Trashcan Man, was sitting on top of Cherry Oil's storage tank, fighting to silence the voices in his head.
How'd you like those shock treatments down there in Terre Haute, Trashy?
What the old lady Simple say when you lit her pension check, Trash?
Hey, Trash, Sheriff Greenlee cut your old man down just like a mad dog. You know that, you friggin' weirdo?
Donald's father, Wendell Elbert, murdered Trashy's 2 older brothers and his sister. and would have murdered Trashcan's mother, too, if Sally Elbert hadn't have fled with a 5-year-old Donald in her arms. On the last shot, Wendell's cheap pistol exploded in his hand, erasing half of his face. After that, Wendell wandered into town, blood in his eyes, screaming and waving around what remained of his gun until Sheriff Greenlee gave Wendell both barrels of his Saturday night special. Because all the factories were shut down, the air was clear, and Trashy could see Gary. Further away, Chicago was a dream wrapped in summer haze, and there was a faint blue glint to the north. That was either Lake Michigan or wishful thinking. It was, Trashcan decided, an excellent day for burning. Sometime in the 3rd or 4th grade, Donald Merwin Elbert started lighting fires in people's trash cans and running away. It wasn't until he was in the 5th grade that the grown-ups found out what he was doing, and good old Sheriff Greenlee went down to talk to Donald's mother, which is what started the romance ball rolling. It wasn't right, his mother marrying the man who cut his father down in front of the Methodist church. The year he was in the 6th grade, Donald started lighting fires in mailboxes, which is how he burned up old Mrs. Semple's pension check. He got caught again, and his new daddy sent him to a place for juvenile delinquents down in Terre Haute. Trashcan Man had an intuitive grasp of machinery, and it didn't take him long to figure out what part of the pumping apparatus he had to unscrew to get to the gas. Trashy was trembling in fear and ecstasy, thinking, "A bomb! I'm standing on a bomb, and there's no one left to stop me or make fun of me. This world deserves to burn." The place in Terre Haute let him go when he was 15, without knowing if he was cured or not. They had given him shock treatments there, and now he couldn't remember things. In school, he couldn't finish his homework and flunked test after test. Eventually, he dropped out of school and started working at the Scrub-a-Dub car wash. Yelling from passing cars, people called him a half-wit and loony, and many things. But it was Trashy that stuck. During his breaks, Donald would sit behind the car wash wondering how the cheery oil tanks would go up. 3 separate explosions? 3 pillars of fire that would burn all day and all night long? Under the blue sky, the breeze died down, and trash cans struck and lit a match, and let it drop into a puddle of gas beneath him. One night, a couple years after Terre Haute, Donald found himself in the vestibule of the Methodist church with a can of gasoline. He knew it was stupid. He knew the police would come right to him. He knew that he'd be locked up in jail this time. But he smelled the gas, and the voices fluttered in his head like bats in a haunted belfry. And he did it anyway. He was, indeed, sent to jail, but he didn't mind it much. People didn't throw rocks at him in jail. And some nights, he dreamed of cheery oil and those beautiful tanks. And now here he was, racing to save his sorry, glorious life. Trashy might have stayed on top of the world and let himself become consumed by the fire and explosions, but he somehow felt that he had a purpose in his life now, something great and grand. The first explosion, the overflow pipe going, sounded like a 5-inch firecracker far above him. Trashy went sprawling when he hit the ground. Gravel scraped the skin from his forearms. He was in a mad, grinning panic. Any second now, and the first oil tank blew. A sudden gust of hot, searing wind, like a strong hand that fitted every contour of his body, struck Trashcan Man and pushed him forward. The second tank blew. Trashy knew if he didn't keep moving, he'd go up in a jigging, screaming blaze of spontaneous combustion. So he ran, the air tasting like heavy metal in his mouth, the breath getting hotter and hotter in his throat, the sweet stench of gasoline overpowering everything. A third tank. A fourth. After Trash ran another quarter of a mile, the warm hand stopped pushing him, and the atmosphere normalized a bit. Everything was burning, a mass of fire where the storage tanks had been. God's ammunition dump going up in the flames of the righteous. Satan storming heaven, his artillery captain a fiercely grinning fool with red flayed cheeks. Trashcan Man by name. Now and forever, never to be called Donald Merwin Elbert again. With no firefighters left in the world, the fire might burn for a month, consuming Pontonville, destroying houses, villages, farms. It might even get as far south as Terre Haute, burn that place where he'd been, or farther. Trashcan Man turned north again, toward Gary. The pristine town, its great stacks quiet and blameless, like pieces of chalk against a light blue blackboard. And beyond, Gary, Chicago. How many more oil tanks? How many gas stations? How many slums as dry as kindling? Good Lord! There was a whole country ripe for burning under the summer sun. Grinning, Trashcan Man began to walk, with the stride of conviction of a man who had discovered a great axle in his destiny and grasped it. After all, weren't there bigger and better fires ahead? Frannie supposed it was her delicate condition, I'm 3 months pregnant, that got her to seek out Harold. All day long she'd been wondering, uneasily, with everyone else dead, who would help her deliver her baby. From behind the Louder house, the click, click, click of a hand mower. But Harold wasn't just mowing, he was running, and he was in tears. Harold? Huh? As Harold sprinted away, he kicked up drifts of mown grass, and Frannie took note of the sweet smell, like gasoline, it released into the hot summer air. Harold, what's wrong? Go away! You don't like me! Yes, I do. You're okay, Harold. In fact, considering the circumstances, you're probably one of my favorite people in the whole world. Now please, tell me what's wrong. I want my mother. Oh, Harold. I thought, when it happened, that wasn't so bad. It probably sounds awful to you, but my mother was never fond of me, and I think I horrified my father with all my reading and writing. You know, he asked me if I was a queer boy once. I got so scared I cried, and he slapped me and told me if I was going to be a baby all the time, I'd best ride right out of town. When they were gone, I didn't feel much one way or the other at first, but I got fooled. I missed them more and more every day. Mostly my mother. If I could see her one more time, I decided to mow the grass, so I wouldn't have to think about them. I started to mow faster and faster, as if I could outrun it. Oh, Frannie, did I look as crazy as I felt? There's nothing wrong with how you feel, Harold. Frannie, will you be my friend? Yes. Thank God. Thank God for that. Harold cleaned himself up, and they had a picnic lunch in the park. Peanut butter sandwiches, Coke, and... Are you going to finish the rest of that Twinkie? No, Harold. Here, I'm full. I've been thinking of what I'm going to do. I was thinking of going to Vermont. Want to come with me? Why Vermont? There's a communicable disease center in Stovington. If there are still people alive and working on this flu, they'd be there, looking for people like us, who are immune. What do you think, Frannie? I think we ought to find a road atlas and see how to get there. Yesterday. It's over 300 miles. Too far to walk, and the roads will be choked with cars. But I was thinking we could take bicycles, or maybe motor scooters. Harold Louder. You're a genius. At that, Harold's face lit up. For a moment, Frannie thought he might kiss her, which, in that single shining moment, she might have allowed. But then the moment passed. In retrospect, of course, Fran was glad. Larry, listen, I want to get out of the city. I can dig that. Let's leave today. The monster shouter they'd both heard the day they met. So monsters were stalking the streets. Human ones, from the look of those stab wounds. We stick to the plan, Rita. We get to Lincoln Tunnel, cross into Jersey, take 495 to Passaic, then head northeast to New England. Make kind of a button hook. Reach Maine, find a house on the ocean, remember? Yes, Larry. I'm sorry I screamed like that. The way leads ever on. What, Rita? Oh, it's a line from Tolkien, The Lord of the Rings. The way leads ever on. I always think of it at the beginning of a journey. As sort of a gateway to Oh, my Lord. Oh, Larry. Not for the first time that day, Larry was grateful he'd thought to pick up a rifle at the Manhattan Sporting Goods store. At 5th and East 39th, a man offered Larry $1 million for the use of his woman. Back the hell off. Easy, man. Can't blame a guy for trying, can you? Have a nice day. Hang loose. At the intersection of 11th Avenue and 39th Street, Larry heard a muffled cry of pain from Rita. Larry, I'm sorry. Rita, my God, what's wrong with you? Were you thinking you could cab back to your apartment if your feet got tired? You're bleeding. How long have your feet been hurting? Since about 5th and 49th, I guess. 20 blocks? And you didn't say anything? Please don't yell at me, Larry. It makes me feel so awful when you... Listen to me, Rita. Larry, my arms. We have another 30 miles to walk. Those cuts could get infected and you get blood poisoning and die. You better get your head screwed on straight and start helping me or... His one-night stand in Queens. I thought you were a nice guy. You ain't no nice guy. His mother. You're a taker, Larry. There's something left out of you. Rita, I'm sorry. We'll get you some new shoes and white socks. Your apology is not accepted. Go on, Larry. Go. Don't let me slow you down. Rita, please. I said I was... 15 seconds later. Do that again, and I really will leave you. All right. Have a good time getting raped and murdered. When he looked back, expecting to see her standing with her arms crossed, accusing him with her eyes, she was gone. Fine, he thought. I tried to apologize. When he got to the tunnel, Larry saw that its overhead fluorescents were out. It would be, he thought, a real dread, like walking into an automobile graveyard. They would let him get halfway. Then they would begin to stir, come alive. He would hear the car doors clicking open and then softly chunking closed, then shuffling footsteps behind him. Rita! Rita! Can you hear me? No answer. Next to him was a caddy with its windows rolled up. It would be like a greenhouse in there. If he opened the door, its corpses would spill out and break open like rotten melons, and the smell would be warm and steamy, wet and crawling with decay, the way it would smell in the tunnel. Rita! Rita! By 4 o'clock, the sky was clouded with storm clouds, and lightning was forking down between buildings. Larry was trying to think rationally. He had forgotten to bring a flashlight. All he had was his butane Bic lighter. There was the George Washington Bridge, but that was 7 miles to the north. And there was the quad rail he could follow, right? Everything else, the dead people in their cars coming to life, that was just comic book stuff. The rain began. Big, cold, dime-sized drops. And hail. Big, stinging hailstones. Okay, he thought. Okay, I'm convinced. 4:09 p.m., Larry stepped into the Lincoln Tunnel. At first, there was enough light that he could see the cars, corpses cooking within them. After the tunnel's first bank curve, Larry resorted to his Bic. There was an echo in the tunnel that made it sound as if someone were following him, stalking him. How long was the tunnel anyway? A mile? 2? Let's say a mile. The average man walks 4 miles an hour. He should be to the other end in no time. I'm walking a lot slower. Fighting the urge to panic, Larry walked on, a step at a time, counting them out. Larry was giving his lighter a break, groping his way through the dark, following the handrail, when his foot stepped on something stiff and unyielding. A horrible sentinel. A murdered soldier. The Bic was growing hot in Larry's hand. Whether he wanted to or not, he had to let it go out. In the dark, he stepped over the dead soldier, afraid the corpse would reach up and grab him. Then Larry ran, a shuffling sort of run, afraid that any second his foot might come into contact with another body, and soon enough, it happened. 6 corpses this time. A Siddick Jew family. They might have been sick, but Captain Trips hadn't killed them. They'd been trying to get to Jersey, Larry surmised, until they reached command post, a machine gun emplacement. Something. At which point they'd been gunned down. By soldiers? That might still be around? Again, the lighter grew too hot to hold, and Larry put it in his pocket, a warm coal against his leg. Solid darkness provided Larry the perfect screen in which his mind could play out the fantasies he imagined. Grim-eyed soldiers looking through infrared peeps, their job to cut down any stragglers who tried to come through the tunnel. Or perhaps just a single suicide volunteer, creeping towards him with a knife. Yet Larry couldn't bring himself to go back, and surely the soldiers were now long gone. No, what was really troubling him, Larry supposed, were the bodies directly in front of him. He wouldn't be able to step over them the way he had the soldier. No, he would have to walk on them if, behind him, in the darkness, something moved. Larry wheeled around, unslung his rifle. Who's there? Who's there? Larry heard. Thought he heard. The quiet sound of breathing. The hairs along the nape of his neck turned into hackles. He held his breath. There was no sound. He was beginning to dismiss the sound as his imagination when he heard it again. A single, sliding, quiet footstep. Larry fumbled madly for the lighter, pulled it out, and the Bic had slipped from his hand, tumbling down the hood of a car below. Oh God! Oh God! His terror-locked mind gave him a picture of someone or something coming to kill him. Then the sound of another step. Blurry after-images hung before his eyes, of tile, of frozen lanes of traffic, as Larry's interior theater was now taken over by images, not of soldiers, but of Morlocks from the classic comics version of H.G. Wells' The Time Machine. From somewhere behind him, a desperate, wretched cry. Larry! Oh, Larry, for God's sake! For one wild second, he thought about not answering her, leaving her behind, but Rita! Stay where you are, do you hear me? He ran towards her voice. Larry, don't leave me alone here. Don't leave me alone in the dark. He held her tightly. Rita, did I hurt you? Are you shot?
No. One of the bullets went by so close I felt the wind of it. And tile chips, I think, on my face. Oh, Jesus. I didn't know. I should have called out. I could have killed you.
The truth of it came home to him with a picture in his mind.
I could have killed you. You won't leave me again, Larry, will you? You won't go away?
There's something left out of you. You're a taker. He kissed her, then said, "No, Rita. Never again."
There was a man back there. I think I stepped on him, Larry.
There are more dead bodies up ahead, Rita. Can you stand that?
If you're with me. As long as you're with me, Larry.
They got over the sprawled bodies of the Jewish family, their arms slung about each other's necks like drunken chums leaving a neighborhood tavern. At several points, Rita screamed. At one point, Larry's foot punched into some dreadful sliminess, and there was a gassy, putrid smell he tried to ignore. Beyond the family, there were more bodies. Larry hoped they were the soldiers that had shot down the Jewish family, themselves killed by Captain Trips, or whatever. A short time later, Rita stopped mid-stride. Larry asked her,
What's the matter? Something in the way? No, Larry. I can see. It's the end of the tunnel. It's the end of the tunnel.
He blinked and realized that he could see the palest blur of Rita's face.
Larry, what if it only happened in New York? And that's why the army closed down the tunnel.
He doubted it, but started to walk faster. The closer they got to the entrance, the more they could see. Soldiers. One last sprawling mass of bodies. Give me a hand, and don't look inside the cab. 3 more dead soldiers, and machine guns and ammunition and canisters that look like tear gas. Christ, Larry thought. Outside, on the other side of hell, a rain-dampened breeze pressed against them, and its wonderfully fresh smell seemed to make the tunnel's horrors all worthwhile. Almost. It wasn't just New York. Oh, dear God. As many people were trying to get into New York as were trying to get out. Who knows why the army tried blockading the tunnel? Probably they didn't know why either. Just somebody's... Rita. Don't, it's all right, Rita.
What is? Just tell me one thing that's all right.
We're alive. And we're out. And there's fresh air. In fact, New Jersey never smelled so good. We ought to get you to the drugstore and put some peroxide on the cuts on your feet. Do you feel up to walking?
Yes. I'll get some sneakers. I'll do just what you tell me, Larry. I want to now.
Rita, I shouted at you because I was upset. I'm not such a bad guy.
Just don't leave me, Larry.
They walked slowly towards the toll booths, New York behind them, and across the river. Stuart Redmond looked at his walk towards the ocean as a kind of healing process. His first 2 nights on the road, he dreamed about Elder, the man who had been sent to kill him. But last night, the dream hadn't come. He supposed, in a way, that he might be walking the poison out of his system, little by little. At least he hoped. Whoa, boy. Easy, easy. Kojak, get down. Leave that man alone. You're gonna track all over his shirt. Oh, he's all right. He's a good dog. Glenn Bateman, at your service. Say, do you like caviar? I never tried it, actually. And for the first time in a long time, Stu felt happy, like maybe everything would be all right. Somehow. As the superflu wound down, there was a second epidemic that took out, at least in the US, roughly 16% of the survivors. In a strictly Darwinian sense, it was the final cut, the unkindest cut of all, some might say. Outside Atlanta, 5-year-old Sam Tauber had been in shock since his whole family died from superflu. Wandering in a blackberry field behind his house, he didn't notice the rotten well cover half buried in the berry creepers. In Lodi, California, Irma Fayette was reading on her porch when a hippie man approached her, a 26-year-old virgin. Irma had been morbidly afraid of rape her entire life. At the sight of the hippie, Irma put down her magazine and picked up her gun. The pistol exploded when she pulled the trigger, killing her instantly. No great loss. In Nyack, New York, George McDougal saw his 12 immediate family members die from the flu. On doctor's orders, he started jogging 10 years ago. Now he jogged to keep the thoughts of his loved ones, Jeff, Marty, Helen, Harriet, Bill, George, behind him. Until, 51 years of age, on the corner of Oak and Pine, he suffered a massive coronary. Miss Eileen Drummond of Clewiston, Florida, took to getting very drunk on creme de menthe. Grieving over a photo album of her deceased family, Eileen lit a cigarette in bed and fell asleep with it. Most of Clewiston burned down that night. No great loss. In Reno, Nevada, Arthur Stimson stepped on a rusty nail after swimming in Lake Tahoe. The wound turned gangrenous and he died from shock and blood loss while trying to amputate his own foot. Swanville, Maine, 10-year-old Candace Morin fell off her bike and died of a fractured skull. In Harding County, New Mexico, the rancher Milton Kraslow was bitten by a rattlesnake and died half an hour later. In Milltown, Kentucky, Judy Horton went down the walk-in freezer in her basement where she stored her husband Waldo and her little boy Petey. To her, the superflu had taken care of the two biggest mistakes of her life, but the freezer door accidentally shut and latched behind her, and Judy starved to death. In Detroit, heroin addict Richard Hoggins found a stash in his dead dealer's row house and shot up right there and then. The stuff was 96% pure and it hit his bloodstream like a highball in freight. Richie was dead 6 minutes later. No great loss. Doo-dah, doo-dah. Ride around all night, ride around all day. Doo-dah, doo-dah. The last meal served in Lloyd's cell block had been 8 days ago? In one of his cell's corners was the skeleton of a rat he'd killed in Trash Cell 5 days ago. The tail was still intact because it was too tough to eat. Despite his efforts to conserve it, almost all the water in Lloyd's toilet bowl was gone. He had been peeing into the corridor so as to not contaminate his meager supply. Just last night, he'd eaten a cockroach. It wasn't half bad, much tastier than the rat, though he'd felt it scuttering madly in his mouth before his teeth crunched down on it. Lloyd didn't want to eat Trask. He didn't want to become a cannibal. It was like the rat. He wanted to have Trask within reach, just in case. Doo-dah, doo-dah, doo-dah. The main reason Lloyd was still alive? He was too full of hate to die, and all his hate coalesced into one simple, imagistic concept: the key. The key was your reward for following the rules. They, the ones who had locked him away, had the key, and they could do what they wanted to you. But not this. Not leave him to die a slow, horrible death. Please! If only he had the key. At first, Lloyd thought his hate was a useful thing because the owners of the key would have succumbed to the superflu already. They would be beyond the reach of his vengeance. Then, little by little, as he grew hungrier, Lloyd realized the flu only would kill losers like him. It wouldn't dare touch those who had the key. But Lloyd would. If he lived long enough to get out, he would touch them plenty. Camp Town ladies, sing this song. Come on, come on. Nothing personal. I ain't gonna eat you, old buddy. Not unless I have to. Lloyd wasn't even aware that he was caressing Trask's leg, nor that he was salivating. Before lunch, Stu and Glenn washed themselves in a cold, clear stream. At lunch, Stu ate hugely of everything except the caviar. He learned Bateman's story, that he'd been a sociology professor at Woodsbury College, that his wife had died 10 years ago and that they'd been childless. That when superflu happened, Bateman accepted it with equanimity, because he said, at least, he would be able to retire the paint full-time, as he always wanted to do. Was Kojak your dog before? No, that would have been an amazing coincidence, wouldn't it? No, I believe Kojak belongs to somebody across town. I took the liberty of rechristening him. Say, will you excuse me a minute, Stu? Forgot I have something cooling in the river. These were supposed to go with the meal. Stupid of me. They taste just as good afterwards. Bubonic plague, the Black Death, decimated Europe near the end of the 14th century. The dancing sickness took place during the latter part of the 15th. Whooping cough near the end of the 17th. The first outbreaks of influenza happened near the end of the 19th. Hell, we're so used to the idea of the flu now. But what everyone forgets is 100 years ago, it didn't exist. What are you getting at, Glenn? Let's walk for a bit. During the last 3 decades of any given century, Stu, religious maniacs arise and claim that Armageddon is finally at hand. Such people are always there, of course, but the numbers tend to swell during those troubled times. And more people start taking them seriously. Monsters appear. Attila the Hun, Genghis Khan, Jack the Ripper, Lizzie Borden, Charles Manson, and Richard Speck. Ted Bundy in your own time, if you like. It's as if Western man needs an occasional high colonic, a purging, so he can face the new century clean and full of optimism. Only in this case, we've been given a super enema because it's the end. It's not the end, Glenn. At least, I don't think so. Just intermission. You ever have bad dreams, Stu? He thought of Elder lurching after him in his nightmares, and of corridors that never ended but only switched back on themselves. Sometimes, Ever since boyhood, I've been plagued by amazingly vivid dreams. But lately, I've been having one that's like the sum of all bad dreams. I wake up feeling as if it wasn't a dream at all, but a vision. What is it? It's a man. At least, I think it's a man. He's standing on the roof of a high building. Or maybe it's a cliff he's on. It's sunset, but he's looking the other way. East. I can't see his face, but he has red eyes. And I have a feeling that he's looking for me. And sooner or later, he will find me, and I will be forced to go with him. And that will be the end of me.
So I try to scream him.
That's when you wake up? Yes. It's just a dream, I suppose. Representing my unconscious fear that some leader or leaders will start the whole mess going again. And by mess, I mean society. You think that's possible, Glenn? Man is a gregarious social animal. Eventually, we'll pull ourselves back together. And when these new societies arise, they'll once again use technology as their cornerstone. At least in the Western world. Because, my friend, we are hooked. These new leaders won't remember the corner we had painted ourselves into before the superflu. The dirty rivers, the hole in the ozone layer, the atom bomb, the pollution, the... Glenn? This dream of mine, Stu, it preys on me. After deciding Stu would spend the night at Bateman's house in Woodville, the two men walked down Route 302. Bateman talked an endless monologue, theorizing that eventually there would be hundreds of little enclaves scattered around the country where thousands of doomsday weapons had been left around like a child's set of blocks. They discussed which animals would die out, which would flourish. Bateman wondered aloud if any of the babies born from this point on would be immune, or if any other babies could even be born. Oddly, though, the thing Stu's mind kept returning to was Glenn's dream about the man with no face. And that night, asleep on Bateman's couch, Stu had his own nightmare. He was back in Stovington. Elder was dead. Everyone was dead. It was a tomb, and he couldn't find his way out. He passed into a part of the installation he had never seen, crowded with people who hadn't died from the flu, but who had been murdered. He glimpsed a sign on a locked room. Then, blessedly, he saw a door to the outside world standing open. Beyond it, the sweet, fragrant night. In his dream, Stu plunged towards it, but as he neared it, a figure stepped into the doorway, blocking his escape. A cold, black shadow where his face should have been. Two soulless red eyes, flickering with a kind of lunatic glee. His hands were dripping with blood, Stu saw.
Heaven and earth. All of heaven and earth.
Stu jolted awake, afraid he had screamed, but in the next room, Glenn Bateman's breathing was slow and regular. Kojak, though, moaned softly in the hallway, and Stu supposed that even dogs had nightmares sometimes. They were perfectly natural things, dreams and nightmares, but Stu wouldn't be able to sleep again until the first slivers of dawn appeared in the window. I've gone to Stovington, Vermont, Plague Center, US 1 to Wells, 95 to Portland, US 302 to Barrel, 89 to Stoving, leaving Agunquit, July 2nd, Harold Emery Lauder, Francis Goldsmith. You really think that was necessary, Harold? I don't know. Most people this way would be traveling along the US 1 and would see it. Anyway, can't hurt. Why did you sign both our names? Well, because we're a team, aren't we? For me, she thought. He did it for me. I guess we are. Hungry? As a bear. That night, they ate a supper of Kool-Aid and canned food at Fran's house. Afterwards, they listened to a record of an old battery-operated phonograph Harold found in his attic. They sat on the couch for hours, listening as the music of a dead world filled the summer night. Anyone home? At first, the sound was so far away and strange that Lloyd thought he might be dreaming it. Anybody home? Going once? Going twice? Strangely, Lloyd's first thought was, don't answer. Maybe he'll go away. Okay, I'm leaving now. Just about to shake the dust of Phoenix from my boots. No! Don't go! Please don't go! Oh, someone sounds hungry. Lloyd wanted to burst into tears of relief, but it was fear he felt in his heart. A terrible, growing dread. The first thing Lloyd saw were the boots. Poke had a pair like that. Then the belt buckle. Then the flushed face. Boo! Ah! You poor guy. You look like an advertisement for DeChow. What's your name, soldier? Lloyd Henry. Please, mister. Can you let me out? I'll do anything. I'm starving. Look at me, Lloyd. The right hand was holding something up next to the right eye. A stone? No. A key. The key. Now you're a man who appreciates the value of a good key. Mister, I'm awfully hungry. Sure you are. A rat isn't the thing to eat. Neither is that fine fellow in the next cell. I only say that because it looks like his left leg is missing a few pieces. And there are teeth marks. You know what I had for lunch? A nice rare roast beef sandwich on Vienna bread with a few onions and some golden spicy mustard. Some home fries and chocolate milk to go with it. Holy cow, I haven't introduced myself, have I? The name's Flag, with a double G. I'm gonna make you my right-hand man, Lloyd. I'm gonna put you right up there with St. Peter. What a deal, right?
Yes.
You'd like to get even with the people who left you here, isn't that right? The anger again, replacing the fear. Yes, sir, I would. Now, you aren't very bright, but you are the first, and I have a feeling you might be very loyal. You and I, Lloyd, we're gonna go far. All I need is your word. Word? That we're gonna stick together, you and me, no denials. There will be others soon. They already know their way west, but for now, there's just us. I'll give you the key if you give me your promise.
I promise.
The sound of tumblers in the lockbox turning. The door rolling open. Free, Lloyd. Come on out. Lloyd stepped out of his cell and something was pressed into his hand. The key. It's yours now, Lloyd.
Mine.
Shall we get you some dinner? Got a lot of driving to do tonight.
Dinner. All right.
Yes, there's such a lot to do. Things are going to begin moving very, very fast. Nick Andros, whose last thoughts before going to bed the previous night was that he'd be dead by morning. The bullet grazed down Nick's leg was infected, and the infection had spread through his entire body. By the time he found and took some penicillin, it was too late, like locking the barn door after the horse has been stolen. His leg was a throbbing, rotten tooth, and he had a fever. In his dreams, he could hear in his dreams. Why don't you speak? Why do you just shake your head? I can't talk. I'm mute. But he was talking and hearing things. A whole world that had been closed off to him. You can if you want to. I can give you everything. I can give you everything you see and hear.
If you fall down on your knees and worship me.
Nick wanted so much. Women, treasure, power, and most of all, to hear the tick of a clock, the secret sound of rain. But no. Then he was pushed, and he was falling through space, through his dream, until he landed in another dream, in a field of corn, and he could hear music? Is that what music was? In his dream, Nick had never been happier. He followed an old voice, like dark leather, that was singing. As Nick approached a ramshackle shack, he realized he knew where he was. Polk County, Nebraska, west of Omaha and a little north of Ocala. The home of the oldest woman in America? How are you making out with that black man, boy? He scares me. I'm afraid. Boy, you got to be afraid. Even a tree at dusk, if you see it the right way, you got to be afraid. We're all mortal, praise God. But how do I tell him no? How do you breathe? How do you dream? No one knows. But you come see me, anytime. Mother Abigail's what they call me, I guess. And I still make my own biscuit. But how do I get out of this? God bless you, boy. No one ever does. You just look up to the best and you come see Mother Abigail and bring your friends. I be right here. Right here. Nick woke up in Shoyo, and he'd never spoken, never heard music, but he was alive. Somehow, the swelling in his leg had gone down. Ache had quieted to a dull throb. I'm healing, he thought. I'm gonna be okay. He limped to the door and looked out at the corpse of Shoyo, and he knew he'd have to leave today. Where to go? The dreams were just dreams, but for a start, Nick supposed he would go northwest, towards Nebraska. Rita was still asleep in the tent, but Larry Underwood was wide awake, and urinating, and looking down and marveling at the picture postcard New England town below him. The only thing that made the picture subtly wrong was the lack of smoke from the mill. No great loss, Larry might have thought, except it was Independence Day, and he was still an American. Very much aware of the breeze on his naked body, Larry cleared his throat and found his pitch and... Oh, say, can you see
by the dawn's early light, what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming. He sang it all the way through. Then he realized that the best way to start another year of independence in this good old U.S. of A. would be by a little bumping and grinding. Rita! Yes, sir. He would wake her up in style this fine morning. Larry Underwood, boy patriot, wishes you a very good... It hit him hard after the fresh mountain air. The sweet, sour smell of vomit. Rita? All he had seen while he woke up earlier was a fluff of Rita's hair. Rita, you all right? A pill bottle rolled out of one of her hands. But Larry was staring into Rita's dead face. Her mouth choked with the puke it had strangled her. He stared at her for what felt like a long time, unable to move. Until the thought erupted in his brain. How long was I sleeping with her after she died? That broke his paralysis. Oh my God, he thought. I was going back in there to... Afterwards, Larry realized he felt relief that she'd died. That he didn't have to take care of her anymore. Which, of course, confirmed everything his mother had ever said about him. I ain't no nice guy. He wondered, if the worst was that he felt relief, that the stone around his neck was gone, why did he feel so awful? Because the worst thing is being alone. Being lonely. Larry told himself he wouldn't cry. He hated crying almost as much as he did puking. In the end, Larry had been a chicken. He hadn't been able to drag Rita out of the tent to bury her. He hadn't even wanted to see her again. Eyes averted, he'd fished out his things out of the tent with a long stick, though he had caught one last glimpse of her staring back at him, accusingly. Shuddering, Larry risked a glance back at the 12-mile point. He wanted to be away from the tent. He wanted to make sure he couldn't see it anymore. He couldn't, and that was good, but Larry took his eyes off the road, and that was bad. Oh shit! He almost got around it. And that was that. You all right? Larry asked himself. Yeah, I'm all right. But he could have fractured his skull and lain there in the hot sun until he died. Or strangled to death on his own puke like certain now-deceased friend of his. Later, even wearing gloves and a helmet, Larry couldn't force himself to go faster than 25. He realized more than anything that he wanted to live long enough to see another human face. Stu Redmond was eating his lunch, while Larry Underwood took his 4th of July spill one state away. He heard the sound of approaching engines before he saw them. 2 teenagers, it looked like, on a couple of Hondas. Stu wondered if they would speed by him or stop, and felt like he didn't want to risk it. Hi! They stopped. I think he's all right, Harold. Stu Redmond, Frannie Goldsmith, and Harold Lauder. 3 dots which, when connected, would form a triangle whose exact shape could not yet be foreseen. Where are you headed? What business is it of yours? Harold, what kind of attitude is that? Mr. Redmond's the first person we've seen. Stu remembered something Bateman said. Give me 3 people and they'll form a society. It's all right. He's watching out for you is all. That's right, I am. Funny, I thought we were watching out for each other. We're going to Stovington, Vermont, the disease center. You're wasting your time. I came from there, and everyone's dead. You're a liar. Harold! Stu told him an abridged version of the story that had began with Campion crashing into Hanscom's pumps and ended with, and well, him meeting them this fine day. Afterwards. I guess Harold and I owe you our thanks. You saved us a long trip with disappointment at the end. Frannie, you mean you believe him? Just like that? Why would he lie? For what gain? Well, how do you know what he's got on his mind? Murder? Could be? Or rape? I don't trust him. Fair enough, Stu thought. That makes us even. Maybe you know something about it I don't? I don't believe in myself. Stop it, both of you! Harold, my God, could you not be so awful? Awful? Me? The point is, what do we do now? We go on anyway. We have to go somewhere. This guy might be telling the truth, but why not double check? Then we can decide what's next. Fine. I suppose it doesn't matter. Good. Let's go, Fran. Something else Bateman said came back to Stu. Man may have been made in God's image, but society was made in the image of his opposite number. He wondered if these two were all right. Surely the girl was. But the boy? Just a second. I guess we're both looking for people. I'd like to tag along with you if you'd have me. 3's better than 2 if there's trouble, anyway. No! Yes. We'd be glad to have you, Mr. Redmond. You're just desperate to get rid of me, aren't you? Fine, you go on with him. I'm done with you. Harold, wait. Hold on. Stay right where you are. Don't hurt him, please. Stu realized Harold wasn't just jealous of him. His personal dignity was somehow wrapped up in it, too. He saw himself as the girl's protector. Harold, are you sleeping with her? None of your business. I'll be plain. I'm not looking to take her away from you. I'm not here to squeeze you out like some bully at a country fair dance. I love her. She doesn't love me, I know, but I'm speaking with you plainly, like you did. Again, I don't want to cut in. I just want to come along. You promise? Yeah, I do. He can come, and I apologize for being such an ass. Hooray! Where are we going? In the end, they decided to keep going west. Their first stop would be Glenn Bateman's to spend the night and see if he would join them. Later, they ate an early supper at a rest stop off the side of the road in Twin Mountain. And Stu found his gaze drawn again and again to. He liked the way the girl looked. He liked the way she talked. He liked her dark hair. And that, friends, was the beginning of Stu knowing that he did want her after all. There was something in the silence. Larry was sure of it. Perhaps a person, perhaps a large and dangerous animal. Of course, a person could be dangerous too. Someone there! Who is it? Had a sound woken him? Or had it just been... No, there was a sound. If the night wasn't so cloudly, the full moon would have shown him. What? Who? He didn't want to know. He didn't want to see. But Larry could swear he heard the sound of dusty boot heels clocking away from him, moving west, fading. Fading. He felt a sudden urge to stand and shout. Come back, whoever you are, I don't care! But then Larry thought, what if those boot heels actually did come for him? Instead of shouting, he lay back down thinking, I won't sleep again tonight. But he was asleep in 3 minutes, and the next morning, Larry was quite sure he dreamed the whole thing. Nick made good time on his 10-speed. The evening of July 4th, he camped in a farmyard. Before bunking down, he watched a meteor shower scratch the night sky with cold white fire. He thought it was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. And he thought, whatever lay ahead, he was glad to be alive.
Hey guys, if you liked this video, please give it a like and a comment. It really helps the channel and I love to read through them. And subscribe so you can keep up with all the uploads. Also, please consider becoming a Patreon. The support helps me make more time to make more videos and upload more often. The link is in the description. If a monthly donation doesn't suit your interest, consider giving a one-time tip to my PayPal. Link is also in the description. Thank you for watching. Till the next time.